And we are live. Hello, this is Ruben Dua from the Connection Loop podcast from Dub. Today, I have Beau Button with me, and this is going to be a really interesting conversation. I recently been checking out this app Temu, which is the Chinese competitor to Amazon, and it's so interesting because every time you go to this app, there's a link, there's a button, there's some call to action that says "spin the wheel for the chance to get 90% off," and the whole shopping experience is based on gamification. And I think it's really interesting, and it seems to be getting a little bit of traction on whatever goods that they're selling. Hopefully, we're not overbuying stuff because things are so cheap. But nevertheless, I think that we should all learn about gamification, psychology, and then something really interesting, which is nature, and how we can use all of these types of things to acquire more clients, more customers, more users, more people that just love us, raving fans that want to share their positive experience with us and our stuff with their friends. So, Beau, if you could start with a short bio, and let's get into this.
Yes, Beau Button from Atlas Reality. My background's for the last probably 30 years been in software development for better or for worse. Spent a lot of time in the enterprise software space, and now I find myself in mobile video games.
Nice. So, I think that from where you sit, what are some of the takeaways that you've learned in the gaming arena, um, that we might be able to learn about and sort of contemplate more at a very visceral level, so that we can figure out ways to acquire more customers for our business. What are you learning? What's new? What's kind of trendy now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, prior to getting into gaming, I was involved in a lot of user experience conversations. You're building user interfaces. And at the time, I didn't really think of it as psychological or psychology based. But it is at the end of the day, not necessarily just about ease of use, but if you're trying to sell a product or if you want someone to upgrade something in like a mobile app, like from free to paid, there's a lot that the UX engineer kind of like thinks about, and I'm seeing a lot more of that obviously in video games. I think that's pretty obvious, at least to
Yeah.
most people. It's like you're hooked. If it's a good game, there's psychological hooks. There are carrots that we dangle in front of you to convince you to maybe not spend money immediately, but the end goal, obviously, it's a for-profit business, is to monetize that customer or that player. And I have a much greater appreciation for that. The game designers, I mean, this is their world. I guess in mobile software versus video games or software in general, like a UX engineer and a game designer are one and the same. But yeah, I'm just seeing that there's a lot of work that goes into these hooks and thinking about how you can convert that customer or that player, like in a free-to-play into somebody who's buying in-app purchases and making you money.
So let's talk about hooks. So when we talk about hooks, there's a couple of different ways that we can interpret what a hook is. Number one, it could be a way to captivate someone's interest. A YouTube video, it starts with a hook. Another could be it's some sort of an offer. It's a chance to potentially receive something or definitely receive something. It's something that's maybe uncertain. There's some curiosity element into it. How can we understand how can we understand the psychology of a hook in the most positive way possible?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one in our space. So we are in the play to earn space. So the end goal for our players is to receive cash. So we kind of have an advantage. If you're playing a puzzle game, you're not, more often than not, you're not there to earn cash. You're there to get to the next level because the next level is cool or better or more entertaining, etc. I think ultimately it comes down to, in its most basic form, like you said, from like a positive perspective, there's a reward. And there's kind of two audiences. You've got and maybe it's not as binary as I'm about to say, but you've got the guys and girls who have disposable income, who don't mind dropping 10, 15 bucks on in-app purchases for some virtual currency. And then you got the free to play, or basically the freemium model, where they will do anything and everything to basically refrain from spending a dollar. And for us in Atlas Earth, which is our primary game, the incentivized ad, the incentivized video ad, or rewarded ads, that's really the hook. Like, you're going to watch an ad, and in exchange for that, we're going to give you something. There's plenty of other hooks, but like that reward, knowing that you're literally just converting a bit of your time into something that would have otherwise cost money.
So now let's just take a minute to talk about the reality that you are building at Atlas. I mean, the metaverse is the future, right? I mean, Tim Cook has an interesting perspective on this, and I think that you shared that in one of your LinkedIn posts. But I'd love to understand, what does the future of the metaverse look like?
I'm not quiet about my distaste for the word metaverse. As a technologist who, I mean, I was on the internet. I wasn't. I'm not old enough to understand or have interacted with DARPA before the internet was born. But I like to simply think of what people are referring to as the metaverse as the evolution of the existing internet. This idea that every person's going to put on a headset and become basically couch potatoes, which I mean, we're pretty close to that nowadays. It's just mobile phones and doom scrolling. I don't subscribe to that, but I absolutely and wholeheartedly believe
So,
that.
sorry, you said doom scrolling. So unpack that, please.
So, nowadays, even without these AR or VR headsets, it's not uncommon to find, like, I'll go to a family member's house. Let's say I have, four family members. They're sitting on their couch. They're all looking at either TikTok, Instagram, YouTube shorts, and they're just sitting there. They're just ingesting content. It's just way too easy. But like when you think about the metaverse, most people aren't thinking about this from a, you know, mobile device perspective, or at least not from a mobile phone perspective. They're looking at it or thinking about it from like an AR or VR headset perspective.
Mm.
So I don't believe that the future of the internet is going to require a headset. I think it'll be an extension of the internet that you can interact with. So when people think metaverse, they think 3D interactive environments that you're walking around. That's just going to be an extension of a website. This is something that we've seen before, but I don't buy into the whole, hey, everybody's going to be walking around in some virtual reality communicating with each other.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's pivot and let's talk about this for a second. We mentioned nature in the title, right? We mentioned how we can use biomimicry, how we can get inspired from Mother Nature, and we can start to introduce or employ certain things that we learn from nature into our business. Now, I think that there is these sort of risk reward elements that we might find in gaming and in business. I feel like there are these sort of dopamine challenges that people want to participate in because there's some outcome that they desire. I think that there's some curiosity elements that we can also pull from. Why are certain flowers brighter and more colorful than others? Is it to simply attract more insects and more bees? Probably. Let's kind of unpack the way that you look at nature and how we can sort of change our mindset to take inspiration to solve the problems in our lives.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I lean very heavy on the tech side. I wish I had a brilliant way to describe how nature could potentially help folks on the marketing side, but I think even though I'm an engineer and I use nature as an inspiration on how to kind of approach very complicated problems. I mean, I think the core takeaway from nature is it is very complicated when you think about all of the moving pieces. When you think about, from a biology perspective, a chemistry perspective, a physics perspective, it's magic. It's an absolute beautiful thing. But like when you get to the core of how the universe works and how all of these relationships are established, it's pretty simple. So that's one kind of thing about engineering that has taken me probably 20 plus years to really understand. Simple solutions to complicated problems. Just keep everything as simple as possible. I work with a lot of engineers that love to build complicated software to solve very simple things. And those become very unmaintainable. They fall apart. So, if you think about like natural selection, Charles Darwin, I kind of use that as a model and a reference when I'm approaching complicated problems. Like I said, I don't have a good way to describe how that, works with marketing. But I know that if you understand more about nature, like you had mentioned, like why do we have seeds? Why do we have fruit? Why are certain flowers a certain color? If you learn, obviously maybe we are trying to attract different types of insects. We have a goal in mind. I think those laws, the more you understand about nature, it just becomes easier to reason about complicated problems, regardless of the domain. So I'm pretty certain that regardless of it being marketing or engineering, if you really dive into how Mother Nature does things and how the universe kind of works, and I'm not talking about crazy like Einstein level formulas or calculus or anything like that, just the basics, it really will do you a benefit, a really it really does help you understand complicated things. And in my world, it helps me build simple solutions.
You know, when you go to the Apple website, there's a lot of nature that you can find in it. In fact, I watched a video once and I did some analysis on it, and the way that the motion occurs on the Apple website, the way that the design elements are with things like the Fibonacci sequence and certain mathematics for design elements, even references, historical references, I think is a really interesting thing. And I think that one of the reasons why I think nature is such a great place to pull from for our business is because it gives us more of a spirit and more of a soul behind what we're doing. In fact, the Dub logo, the colored version of the Dub logo, is blue, teal, red, and then a space in between, which is like the negative space. And all of the things about the Dub logo actually mean something. And there's psychology and there's a story behind it with the water sign and the air sign and the fire sign and then the space between. And there's actually a video icon right there. That's a play button. So we took to nature when we developed our logo, and it kind of it inspires us every time we see it. And I think that when we are trying to solve the problems in our life and we're trying to say, how can we acquire more customers? How can we actually retain more customers? How can we make customers more happy? How can we get our customers to produce and to reproduce more happiness, more results, and more referrals? And I think that nature is, of course, a great place to be able to pull from. So, thank you for that reference. I'm glad we discovered that in our intro call before this podcast.
Yeah, not a lot of folks I work with I'm sure they understand it, but it literally, I think I only kind of came to that realization about 10 years ago. It clicked. I was like, my goodness, this is really just, it's how Mother Nature, and call what you want, the universe, Mother Nature. But, if you walk outside and just observe, just sit back and look at all of the moving pieces. And I'm not talking about the cars and I'm not talking about the airplanes. I'm talking about the trees, the insects, the birds, the bees. It's impressive, but if you dig into it, everything has a purpose, and if you kind of dig into why things are doing what they're doing, you can really learn from that.
I had an inspirational experience with nature recently, which is very domestic and very simple, but it was meaningful for me. Which is that I had this plant that was dying. In fact, there was 2 plants in my house that were dying, and I said, okay, let's do some pruning. Let's cut the leaves that are not going to make it because they're just sucking out the nutrients, and the whole thing's going to die if I don't clean up house. So the first thing was I cut all the leaves. The second thing that I did was I got one of those automatic watering detectors, which is a little metal spike that you put in the soil, and it tells you how much water.
Hygrometer. Yeah.
What's that?
It's a hygrometer. Yeah, I do a lot of that.
There you go. Yeah.
Hydroponic growth and legal. Forgive me. Every time I say that, people's ears perk up. I grow tomatoes.
Right. Yeah, these are just houseplants. And then, because if you do the research, a lot of houseplants actually die from overwatering because people are like, oh, let me water the plants 3 times a week. And little do you realize there's no circulation. There's no way for the water to escape. And it's just
drown the plant. Yeah.
You drown the plant. You're rotting all the roots. So anyways, I did all those things. I cleaned up the leaves. I got the spray bottle. Someone told me to do that. Someone told me to put some baking soda in the soil. I didn't want to do that yet. So I noticed as I put these plants by the window, I noticed that the leaves started to turn towards the light. And I knew that happened theoretically speaking, but I'd never seen it in such an instant way. I mean, I'm talking about in like an hour.
Yeah.
I came back and I said, wow, the leaves are moving towards the light. This plant is desiring light. This plant has been stuck in this house with LED light bulbs, which are probably terrible for it, which are not working, and instantly within probably a couple of days, I noticed that this plant just started to change its color. It was more perky. The leaves weren't falling over. None of the leaves were getting dry or dark. It was unbelievable. And it's a reminder for us that, nature wants to move towards the light. That's what nature wants to do. So what is light? What is light for our businesses? It's developing games. It's developing content. It's developing value. And sure enough, those leaves, which is our customers or our users or prospects, whatever you want to call them, they're going to move towards our light. So
that's beautiful. I've got a tear. Honestly, that's the most elegant way to describe what we're talking about. And the analogy is close to my heart. Like I mentioned, my fiance is the house plant person. I'm the
Okay.
vegetable plant person. We have a lot of indoor hydroponic systems. I've probably purchased every one off of Kickstarter just to see which ones work.
Oh, wow.
Similar experience. One of them told me that once the seedlings started to sprout, cut off the ones that you think are weak. And I'm like, why would I do that? I want as many of these as possible. And like you said, it's the distribution of nutrients, and you want to basically invest in those things that are strong. But yeah, I see it every day. I love, we do use LED lights. They're full spectrum. There is a type of LED light that you need to use internally. But no, that is a beautiful way to describe it. Moving towards the light.
Yeah, move towards the
Very
light.
nicely said.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think that in business you hear this Pareto principle, which is that 20%, 80% of your growth is going to come from 20% of your effort. So just focus on the 20%, because chances are you're wasting time in the other 80%. And that makes sense to me. There's a lot of things that we can waste our times doing as business owners and as sales leaders and growth leaders. There's a lot of things that we could probably stop doing. And I think that one of the things that's really interesting here is that when you think about the idea of pruning, when you think about the idea of getting rid of stuff, that's the most natural thing that you can do for your business. I mean, this is a kind of a sad story, but it was another reminder on actually how ferocious nature is. There's these nests that come to our backyard every year, and we just let them be because it's kind of cool to have. The kids love it, right? So there was this one little chick that was abandoned. It wasn't the mother father just left it to be, and it couldn't fly. This poor thing could not fly. Something was wrong with it. I don't know if it was injured or if it had some sort of a deformity, but it was abandoned. And I remember going outside and seeing it, and I sort of realized, okay, something is not right with this little chickling here, and it's been abandoned by its family. And at first I was like, that's terrible. That's so mean. Why would you do that? It's kind of like with your seedlings. Like, why would you cut those? Like, we should have more birds and more offspring. And then I realized, I went back to one of those documentaries that I saw on Netflix, the one with Will Smith. It was really good, actually, and he just talks about how ferocious nature truly is. And we actually found a little non-profit place that took the bird in. We had to donate like $100, and I actually don't know what happened to the poor little thing. Hopefully, it made it, but barring human intervention, nature is going to be really ruthless, actually. And I'm not suggesting that we should be ruthless. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I am saying is let's just focus on the things that generate, it's okay to let some of those things go. Because if we all as a team come together and can focus on those most productive things, the sky's the limit for our potential.
No doubt. Seeing through it all and just remaining focused. Perseverance, that's another thing, regardless in what you're doing. It's in my DNA. I don't give up, and I think that's why I've succeeded as a technologist. It's like insatiable. I need to know why. But yeah, no, that's another great way to kind of describe nature. I've had similar experiences. We might be related somehow because for us it was a screecher owl. We found a very small screecher owl that was injured. I don't think it was $100. I think maybe it was $50, and I felt kind of silly at first because I was like, I'm paying, whatever, this is worthy because it's a beautiful little animal. But yeah, same thing. If we wouldn't have picked it up, we have 5 dogs. The neighbors have 3 dogs. There's house cats that come outside. It would have been a snack if we wouldn't have intervened.
Right. Yeah. So what has your experience been? What are some of the things that you can pull from in having a garden? You're growing a garden, right? So what are you growing? What are we working with here?
I do a lot of microgreens. So I have 2 house rabbits, and I normally go to the local Indian bazaar because they have the best prices on cilantro, and buy a boatload of cilantro to feed to them. We prefer to feed them just vegetables instead of like the off the shelf pellets or whatever they're called. But yeah, I do a lot of arugula, rocket, spinach. I've got some indoor cherry tomatoes, some sweet peppers. I grow a lot of basil. My rabbits love basil. We also consume some of this, but I've got so much of it. I can literally walk into the living room, cut off an entire head of buttercrisp lettuce, and just give it to the rabbits as a snack. My outdoor garden this year was scorched. I didn't have a single tomato because it's been 109 degrees, and they're not growing, unfortunately. So I told my fiance that next year we need to sell a car because I'm going to have the entire garage just full of vegetables. I'm done also being outside. I have to wear like this giant sombrero in order to go outside and not die. So yeah, that's really it. But I'm not doing like a DIY hydroponic. Like I started off just being intrigued with these off-the-shelf devices I saw on Kickstarter that are Wi-Fi enabled that tell you when they need water. They're not as sophisticated as some of the commercial ones that tell you the types of nutrients they need. So it's kind of just every 2 weeks put some more nutrients in there. But it's getting there. The last one I bought has an AI element to it, which is really cool, and it has cameras. And they give you basically a conversational AI that says, "Hey, this plant looks like it needs this. This plant needs to be, groomed," which I thought was mind blowing because it's really simple. Growing your own food is something that I think more people should really start to do. And if you could do it indoors, and it's a beautiful statement piece. When you walk in, this thing is it's 32 plants. It's a vertical hydroponic drip.
What is this called?
This is called Garden, Gardyn. It's a bit pricey, but the initial investment, if you do the math on how much cilantro or basil cost, you will receive your return on investment is about a year and a half. Garden. Yep, this is the product. It's a beautiful, and the lights come on. It's automated. I think their AI is called Kelsey, or it's got a K name, but it literally is a conversational bot that teaches you or really instructs you on how to grow your own vegetables indoors with just water and basic nutrients.
So here's my question. What about the whiteflies?
So I have about 9 catchies. I'm assuming you said flies, correct? Not white flies. So indoor house flies. This is a problem. With hydroponic systems that use rock wool, so the growing medium that I use or they use in this system is rock wool. I haven't experienced on this unit any, I call them just like fruit flies or gnats. I don't know what their technical term. I've seen the little mildew flies, or there's a name for them that they love the green algae. I have another unit that doesn't use rock wool. It uses some type of, it almost looks like dirt, but it's compacted. I don't know how to describe it, but that's the one I've had the most problems with flies. But I went to Amazon and looked for, basically fly trap. And there's a company called Catchy, Katchy. It's a little $20 device that literally has a fan that acts as a vacuum with a ultraviolet light that attracts the flies. And at the bottom of it is a giant sticky pad. And I probably replace that once a month. And, there's probably 100 little bitty flies on it. I haven't found a solution that just stops them at the source, because some of the things that you could do would ultimately, influence the growth of the plants. But that's been the least invasive from the plant's perspective. It's just literally a fan with a glue trap.
There it is. Yeah. I mean, talk about using, talk about a natural reference for acquiring things, moving towards the light.
Well,
right?
No, absolutely. I didn't even put two into. That's exactly what this thing does. At night,
you can use it to attract the good stuff, and you can use it to attract
the bad stuff. Yeah, I want it to be as friendly to them as possible. I mean, it's just, they're not doing me any harm. I mean, I don't want them flying around my face. Like, that's one of my biggest pet peeves when you go to a picnic or a barbecue and like there's flies everywhere. It's like, my God, I can't even, like, I don't have an appetite. But yeah, I mean, ultimately they do die, but it's a quick death, I'd imagine. I hope.
Yeah. Cool. So tell us a little bit about your company. Tell us about, the founder stories, the origin story, how the whole thing came about. I mean, there's a lot of business owners, there's a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of risk takers that listen to this podcast, and people always love to hear about, from an inspirational perspective and a learning perspective, trials and tribulations of company founders. Because we all know that if you look at being an entrepreneur and what it feels like and looks like to be an entrepreneur on the internet, on social media right now, it's very different from the reality in terms of what we have gone through over the course of 5, 10, 20 years sometimes. So I'd love to hear your origin story, the biggest lows, biggest highs, lowest lows, biggest highs, share whatever you can with me.
Yeah, I mean, quite honestly, at an early age, I kind of felt that I had no choice to be an entrepreneur. It may not sound like it now, but I'm a very direct, very blunt. I have no throttle, no governor. So, when I was an employee, even as an engineer, I didn't start off going straight into engineer. My first job was at a grocery store. Didn't really need to do much other than stock shelves. But my second job was as a full-time software engineer when I was a junior in high school. But I never could just not say what was on my mind, for better or for worse. And that wasn't really acceptable. And it wasn't like I was attacking anybody. It was just like, this is not how it works. I know this is not how it works. I just spent the last 9 nights digging into it. And what you're saying is wrong. And some people just don't receive that well, especially when you're 16 or 17. They're like, oh, what do? You know, I have a master's degree. And I'm like, that's nice, but you don't know how this works. So it was just kind of my destiny. I was like, you know what? I don't want to work under somebody because I want to be able to just speak my mind free and clear. So from an early age, I had started a software development company with a friend from high school. We would do anything, literally. Back then, like, we couldn't be picky. It's like whatever we could do. If you wanted a website or a landing page, or we even designed business cards, and I had no business designing business cards, trust me. But you know, I had probably 4 years of experience with Adobe Illustrator just playing around. So I was like, sure, I'll do this for you. Just pay me. But yeah, I mean, I think most people that have, you know, if they haven't started a business or they're thinking about it, they've probably heard somewhere like, failure is not a bad thing. It's part of the process. And that's true. Like, perfection is not something that really exists, at least not from my experience. Like, Apple's kind of the gold standard, but they've also had a lot of failures. But a lot of people like, you know, Apple is just like perfect. And I'm not going to lie, their integration between their devices is near flawless. It's beautiful. Mm-hmm. I'm actually an Android user, but that's a compliment because I trust that if I needed to get my mom a phone or my daughter a phone, it's going to be an iOS device, not an Android device.
Yeah.
But, you know, failure. So what you get from those types of experiences where things just don't work out, you know, and I'm not suggesting like failure for, you know, having a partner commit fraud or stealing money from you. That's a bit different, but failure because an idea didn't work or your timing wasn't right. You learn a lot. And I don't actually currently play a musical instrument, but I was in band my entire middle school and high school, you know, kind of career. And after
did you play an instrument back then?
I did. It's kind of embarrassing. So my sister had a clarinet, and in middle school, that's all we had. So I played a clarinet, and I was probably 5'6", and a clarinet was fitting. Between my 8th grade year and 9th grade year, I grew like a foot, it seemed like. And my band instructor said, "You're no longer a clarinetist. You're a brass." I'm like, "Well, I don't know how to read bass clef." And ultimately, I became a tuba player. A 270-pound tuba player. And I grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana. So we have Mardi Gras. We have 10-mile marching band, like during the parades. It was a great experience, you know, just by having to lug. At the time, it's called a sousaphone. It's kind of a fiberglass configuration of it's a marching tuba, basically. But yeah, that's what I played. But the analogy there is after a few years of either learning how to read music or I kind of, and I'm not some kind of prodigy, like I play, tuba is really easy. It's bass, like bum, 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 bum. As long as you know where the notes are and what octave it is, I kind of just winged it my entire 4 years of high school. It's like I didn't apply for like honor band, but it's an intuition. It becomes very intuitive. And, you know, learning from those failures, you can kind of detect rabbit holes. So I've started several businesses where it didn't work out, and I've learned a lot. And I've used that kind of knowledge and that, I don't know, like that rhythm or like that energy that's just present. Like it's in your brain, those experiences, those memories, to kind of guide me in subsequent ventures and not make the same mistakes. So there's no harm in it. And I'm not suggesting you start off with the intent to fail. And obviously I started everything with the intent that I'm going to take over the damn world. It just didn't work out, but I learned a lot from that.
You know, that's so important. You know, I'm a musician. I play a bunch of instruments that I've learned. I started out on a violin. Actually, I'm staring at you know what? I might be able to show my childhood. If I turn this camera
You still have it. That's incredible.
I think I can show this. I think I can show my child. I've never done this. Let's see if this works. I'm going to switch cameras and I'm going to share my childhood violin. Can you see it right there behind the speaker?
Well, yeah. You're a musician. That's an understatement. You're literally in a studio recording.
This is literally my home studio for music. It's half of it is a podcast studio, and half of it is.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
I like your little mini split air condition too. That's a very wise choice.
Yeah, you know, in the when it got hot, God, that thing was the best investment ever.
Yeah,
but you know, here's my takeaway on music. You know, first of all, music is nature, because there is a sound, there is a frequency, there's a vibration in our universe that is basically the music of the universe. And I think that if we understand that sound is something that truly unifies us all. I mean, music is the universal language, isn't that what they say? I truly believe that we can add a whole different experience. And to make a full circle, to talk about gaming and how important it is to have a soundtrack. I mean, some of the best games on the planet, what makes them so good is their soundtrack. Who is that game developer that developed the game and also composed all the music? I can't remember his name. It's going to come to me in a minute.
Their audio, no doubt.
Yeah, but I think that there's so much that we can pull
I was
from.
going to say, I can't say that our games have. There's kind of a delay. Sorry, we had a delay there for a minute. I was just going to say, if you're looking for great audio, Atlas Earth is probably not the place. It's good, but I know what you mean. I don't play a lot of video games, quite honestly, but there was a video game when I was in high school called, was it Final Fantasy? And I had a really close friend who loved playing the game. And I remember he shared the soundtrack with me. And I listened to the music for the longest and had never played the game. And then one day I saw the game and I'm like, why does that sound so familiar? And I've forgotten that it was actually a soundtrack from one of those games. But no, you're absolutely right. That's one regret I have, is I wish I would have continued down the music journey. I just kind of looked at it as an opportunity. In public school in Louisiana, you have electives. And one option was band or physical education. And if it's not obvious, I'm not a bodybuilder. So I chose to play a musical instrument instead of going out and playing baseball, etc. But after high school, I stopped. So it's incredible you continued.
I'm gonna give you I'm gonna do what I do to most people, where if I feel like they need to get back into music, I'm like a psychic. I'm like, here's the instrument that you should pick up and start playing. I've bought people guitars and ukuleles and flutes and all sorts of random stuff. And I'm going to tell you what I think you should pick up if you would listen to that. But I also want to remind people that music in so many ways is math. And it sounds so beautiful when we listen to a beautiful song that we love. But if you understand the theory behind that song, you can actually understand that there's science and there's math behind it. And I think that there's something really beautiful that happens with a positive user experience, a positive customer experience, where you walk into Starbucks or you walk into the Apple store or you walk into a Lexus dealership and you feel something. You feel something positive. You feel something good. You don't know what it is. You can't put your finger on it. Is it the smell? Is it what it looks like? Is it the sounds that you're hearing? The fact of the matter is that it's everything. But if you peel back the onion and if you reverse engineer that, there was people just like you and me that are business owners and entrepreneurs and creative people that actually crafted that customer experience. And the title of this podcast is How to Acquire Customers. If we can make the customer acquisition process truly a musical, symphonic experience where people just like it. It's like walking into a Four Seasons spa. It just feels good. They're not actually going to think about what makes it amazing. They're just going to pay us money. They're just going to say, I want a massage. I'm ready for my facial here at the spa,
Absolutely.
So that's just a thing. Close us out. I'm going to grab something and I'm going to show you, but close us out. Give us some words of wisdom. I'm going to make you full screen for just a moment here and then I'll come right back.
No worries. Yeah, just kind of a continuation of what I said earlier about failure. I've worked with a lot of folks who are afraid to fail. I'm one of the first, on the tech team to admit that, all right, well, this was the wrong decision technologically. I think kind of the differentiation between myself and those folks who are afraid of failure is learn from it, kind of try to fully understand it and just do a better job next time. But don't really seek perfection. Just get it done and move forward. You should always be moving forward. Don't get caught up in the weeds on trying to achieve perfection. And I mean that from a UI perspective, how things look, from a customer experience or UX perspective, and even on the tech side. So yeah, just don't worry about failure. I mean, focus on succeeding, but if it happens, learn from it and kind of just move forward.
Beautiful words of wisdom. And here's my recommendation for you. So this is a ukulele. And there's a specific type of ukulele that I want you to consider playing. Maybe if you can just go to a music shop or if you can check one out online. It's called a bass ukulele, right? And I spent some time in Hawaii. I was actually in Hawaii just a day or two before the I was in Maui actually a day or two before the fires came, which was really emotional for me. And I remember going to this restaurant that was there called Fleetwood's, which it was in Lahaina on Front Street, totally burned down. This is the co-founder of the famous band Fleetwood Mac. His whole restaurant burned down. And I remember being at that place, and there was a bass ukulele player, and I was seeing him groove. And I was
I've
seeing
never actually heard of a bass ukulele. That's
it's a bass
intriguing.
ukulele, and it's gonna look a little bit like this. It's gonna be a little bit longer, but it's got these thick strings on it to sound like a bass, because that's like a tuba. That's like it's a stringed instrument that functions basically the same way as a brass bass instrument. And it's the thing about this instrument, though, is that it's so beautiful to play. It's so easy to play because it's small, it's compact. You can have it next to your desk. Let me show you what a picture looks like.
No, I'll have to look at one. I've always gravitated towards bass, like the rhythm. Like, I have a friend who's, a lead guitarist, and the things he can, I'm just like, my brain doesn't work that way. My fingers, for the longest, I thought the fact that I typed fast would translate to me being able to play the piano, and I took piano lessons. I made it like 4 lessons, and then I realized that's not true. But yeah, I love the idea of having something very portable and something I can just pull out and play.
So here is my my recommendation for you, my musical recommendation. Grab a ukulele bass. Here's one.
Absolutely. Well, I'll have to give it a try and see, because
give it a try, and if it doesn't work out, I will buy it from you.
It'll make a perfect gift for somebody if it doesn't. I have a guitar I bought probably 5 years ago, but it's one of those things, you have to get through the calluses. You got to get through all of these things, and
not if it's a
unfortunately,
nylon string. That's the other thing about these ukuleles, is that you don't get the calluses because their strings are so buttery. I have all the guitar's calluses. If you touch these 2 fingers,
it's hard as a rock. Yeah,
it feels like wood. It's amazing because I've just torn the skin. Even the nails are a little gone. But hey, you know what? That's music, and find something that you love, and it's never hard work, right?
No doubt, no doubt.
Well, Beau Button, thank you so much. Where can people connect with you? Give us your LinkedIn, social accounts, X, Twitter, whatever it's called this week.
Yeah, LinkedIn's where I'm at most frequently, and it's Beau, Beau Button, Button. To the best of my knowledge, there's only 2 of us on this planet, and the other one's my 16-year-old son. So yeah, just if you go to Google and just type in Beau Button, LinkedIn normally is the first result. So just go straight to LinkedIn, Beau Button. I do have a Twitter presence, a few things I've posted on, or I've had other podcasts, but LinkedIn's where I, am actively. So don't hesitate to connect with me if you want. Just, name the podcast, and I'll talk. I love talking about tech. I mean, honestly, all of this stuff. But yeah, don't be shy.
There it is, folks. And I got in the comments, I have the LinkedIn for Beau, and there it is on the screen. Connect with Beau. Beau, this is great. We talked about gaming, we talked about psychology, we talked about nature, we talked about music, and we talked about your future potential musical instrument. So thank you for your time.
Next time I see you, I'll be playing the bass ukulele.
We're gonna jam.
Yes, we'll jam. Sounds like a plan. It was a pleasure. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk to your audience.
Thanks again.